Hello and welcome. This is episode 28 of Rabbit Hole Reviews. Today we're doing something a little different. We're going to take a look at a rifle, which I don't do too many rifle reviews on the channel, but that's going to change in the future. You're going to see a bunch of different long guns mixed in with the pistol reviews that I've already been doing. Today's rifle is a bullpup. This is the IWI X-95 Tavor. This one is chambered in 5.56. It's also chambered in 300 blackout. And they have a 9mm conversion kit you can get for this. And it's also chambered in 5.45 by 39, the AK-74 caliber, for export, and is licensed produced. I know the Ukrainians produce it as the Fort 223. It's a licensed produced X-95. And of course, other countries have purchased it for their militaries, aside from the IDF. Now, the IDF has been using the X-95 since 2009, and I think these started coming to the country around 2015, if I'm not mistaken. I picked this up probably, 2019. So I'd been looking at these for several years before I actually bought one. Now, if you look at this rifle, I didn't flip the screen around. This is actually a dedicated left eject system. So I'm left-handed. So if you see the ejection port here is blocked off, normally the bolt face would be here, or you'd see an open area here. It is not. It's going to eject out the other side because I'm left-handed. And they've reversed the controls. So now the charging handle is on the right-hand side, kind of like an AK, whereas in the other version, it's going to be on the left-hand side. And the safety has been relocated. The magazine release is ambidextrous, so you don't have to worry about that. But they've flipped the safety on the right-hand side, put the charging handle on the right-hand side, and put the ejection port on the left-hand side. For those weirdos like myself who are left-handed, at least when we shoot rifles, machine guns, and shotguns, I shoot from the left. It's a peculiarity I have. So I did get this rifle at a steep discount because it's dedicated left eject. That's probably the one disadvantage that this rifle has. Yes, it can be converted from right hand to left hand eject, but it requires a little bit more than, say, like an AUG, a Steyr AUG. I can buy the bolt for $240 and just drop it in, and it's less than 2 minutes to convert an AUG from right to a left-hand eject. Not so much with the IWI Tavor. It can be done. It's just a little bit more to it, and a little bit more cost too. Anyway, we'll move on. So 7.1 to 7.9 pounds is the overall weight. It's a long stroke gas piston operated rifle. Let's talk about some of the things from the top to the bottom, right? So starting out front, you got a birdcage flash hider, standard thread pitch for the M16 and M4s. So anything that you're putting on AR-15 barrels will fit on this rifle. They put the standard thread pitch. I just kept the birdcage on there because it's good enough for government work. Moving back, you've got QD cups. You have 3 of them on each side, 1 and 2 and 3, non-rotational, very nice feature, duplicated left and right. So you have 6 different attachment points for your QD cups. You have Picatinny rail. These have actually been exposed. So you have Picatinny rail on the 12, 3, 6, and 9. Obviously the 12 is just the top rail, but you have 3, 6, and 9 underneath covers. So the rifle will ship with covers that are not on screen here because I've configured it to how I use it. If you don't want to have exposed pick rail, you can put those flush covers back on and it hides everything. And it's very, very smooth, very nice. And you can still use the QD cups because they leave a hole there. Now, it also comes with backup iron sights integrated into the top Picatinny rail. This is a very nice feature. They didn't continue that trend with the Tavor 7, the 7.62 NATO version. And I wish they had done that. I'm going to do a review on the Tavor 7 once I get a hold of a Tavor 7. So you have integrated backup iron sights. These actually become part of the Picatinny rail surface if you close them. So that's kind of nice. Doesn't have any disruption in the pick rail surface. It has a tritium front post. They actually work pretty well. I don't use them anymore because, well, I have an EOTech 512, as you can see on here, and that's the way I'm running it. The barrel is 1 7" cold hammer forged chrome line barrel. Accuracy I found is pretty good. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of reviews on YouTube, people talking about how they're not happy with the X-95's accuracy. And, we'll get into that once I go over a few other things. It really has to do with your intended use for this rifle. And in my case, how I've set this rifle up and what my expectations for are. So moving back, the one thing I like about the X-95 is, unlike things like the AUG and some of the other bullpups out there, the controls for the most part are very M4, M16 like. You've got the magazine release, very similar in it's got a gate around it. It's very similar in location than an M16. So if you're used to that manual of arms, this is very intuitive. It's ambidextrous. You have the safety in the relatively same position that you'd see it in an M16. And it has this cutlass style trigger guard, which, if you don't like this cutlass style, you can actually, well, with a hex wrench, you can buy a replacement part and swap it out in 2 minutes, and it gives you a conventional trigger guard that comes out to about here. I like this because, well, you can use if you're wearing tactical gloves, or if it's cold out, or if you've got injured hands. I don't know, maybe you lose a trigger finger and you need to use other fingers to activate the trigger. You can do so. I like the non-traditional look. It's something different. It's kind of reminds me of something like a FAMAS, the second generation FAMAS. It's an acquired taste. Now the IWI version the military version is actually shorter than this rifle. What you're not going to have on the IWI military version is this large rubber butt pad. They don't have this. The rubber butt pad comes out to only about here. And of course you have a shorter barrel. It's not a 16-inch barrel. I think it's a 13-inch. Now I'm not going to go and get an SBR version of an already short rifle. Really, one of the benefits of buying something like this is that you have SBR length, but you have rifle performance. And you don't have the Form 1 hassle and the tax stamp costs and all the wait time and just the paperwork nightmare that, who wants to deal with that? Especially in light of recent events where you have pistol braces being now Form 1 and just a whole lot of mess. This is a perfect alternative to something like a braced pistol or an actual SBR. I would much rather have something like this in 16.1-inch barrel than, say, a Colt 13.5-inch barrel. 13.5 inch is going to require me to get a tax stamp, and I get better ballistics out of this. Maybe not better accuracy, but definitely a little bit more muzzle velocity and just a lot less hassle. So up top, you see I have an EOTech 512 because I've set this rifle up for CQB, but really you can engage targets no problem out to 300 yards with this. I've done that. You're looking at man-sized targets at 300 meters. That's my expectation, just to hit it somewhere on the target. It has a 1/3 riser from American Defense on here. Not a very inexpensive. It's pretty inexpensive option. Very well made. It's QD, so I can QD this entire unit. And there's also a forward assist. A lot of people don't realize that the X-95 actually has a forward assist right here. Now it's not as prominent as, say, an M16's, but there's a little area right here where you can take your thumb and kind of force that bolt closed. Do you think you need a forward assist? I don't think they're necessary, but it's a nice feature to have. Usually if you have to force the bolt home on a round, there's probably a problem there that you need to fix before you squeeze the trigger. That's my thoughts on the issue. And so, yeah, moving back, you've got, obviously it takes standard M16 magazines, Stanag types of all different types. I've used every kind of a magazine you can imagine. USGI aluminums, I've used steel, HK magazines, I've used Magpul, all the gens, I've used hex mags, I've used them all. And so here you have a 20 round PMag. So these are kind of nice for the range. They insert, and it's pretty flush, right? So inserted, it doesn't extend past the cutlass grip. So if you want to get down low to the ground, you can do that. And now that I have an empty magazine inserted into the weapon, I can show you the magazine release. So pull the charging handle, and what happens is the magazine release or bolt open device is down here. So this pops out on a loaded magazine or empty magazine, sorry. And when you want to chamber a round, now imagine that I just fired 20 rounds out of this magazine. and it locked open on an empty magazine, as it should. This will protrude, and I can remove said empty magazine, insert new magazine, and then just hit switch. So it's very intuitive, obviously different than an M16 or M4, which is going to be on the flip side of the rifle up in this area. You get used to it pretty quickly. Not a whole lot of transition. That's really the major difference between an M16, M4 platform and a Tavor, is that you have the bolt release back here, which of course that's going to happen because the bolt's back there, right? It's a bullpup, so it has to be pretty much back there. I like this even more than, say, the AUG's bolt release. Bolt release on the AUG is not ambidextrous. It's on the flip side. And if you get a NATO version of the AUG, you don't even get that. So you'd have to get the Steyr magazine version to even have that lock on the other side. This is purely, it's 100% ambidextrous on the bottom. This rifle, to me, now to get into why I bought this, well, I like different rifles, and I kind of had a little bit of AR-15 fatigue. I think a lot of people do. I mean, yes, the AR-15 M16 is an excellent platform. That's why everybody uses it, because it's readily available, lots of modularity, inexpensive parts, and lots of people have experience with it. And it gets the job done, and you can do whatever you want with it. This, a little bit less flexible. I'm not swapping uppers out. I'm not swapping triggers out as easily or as cheaply. But what this allows you to do, in my opinion, is replace a couple of different weapons. If you have something like an X-95 Tavor, it's my opinion that you don't need a pistol caliber carbine at all, and you don't need PDWs, and you don't need traditional short-barreled rifles that are formed one, say, 14.5 inch, 11.5 inch, 13 inch AR-15s. You don't need those. That's my opinion. This is an excellent alternative. Yes, I mean, they cost a little more money. We're looking at $1,700, $1,800. You can get it cheaper depending on where you look. I got this one at a pretty decent discount because it came as a left eject, and I guess they had several of these in stock that they couldn't get rid of because only weirdos are left-handed. And so that's where I came in, and I bought it at a nice discount. That worked out for me. Your mileage may vary. But really, that's really something, that's part of the reason why I made this video. One, I like the X-95. Yes, the accuracy is not up to the same level as your basic M4, but the intent is really not to replace the M4 with this. The intent is to replace pistol caliber carbines that shoot pistol calibers, right? And SBRs that are not as accurate and have more hassle. So you just buy something like this. It's considered a rifle, standard purchase. It's not on anyone's radar more so than your standard AR-15. And I know a lot of different channels have talked about accuracy issues and rubber plastic washers and removing this and doing that. I really don't think you buy this with the intent to, I think you shouldn't buy this with the expectation to get, free-floated AR-15 accuracy. That's not really the idea here. I think you should buy this, well, one, because they're very well made. They are pretty ambidextrous, and modularity, I mean, there's a little bit of modularity. You have Picatinny rails already installed. You can change the cutlass grip back and forth. And you have tons of Picatinny rail on the top, and it has integrated backup irons already included. So it's pretty much ready to go out of the box. You just need a sling and a magazine. Now in this configuration, I've set it up as a, like I said earlier, a CCW style weapon, but I've shot this rifle out to 300 yards and made accurate hits with standard M193 ball. That's pretty much what I use almost exclusively, just basically because of cost. And yeah, I'm sure with 77 grains, I'd probably shoot a little bit better. But I'm managing to hit a man-sized target at 300 meters consistently with an EOTech 512. Nothing fancy, right? I think a lot of the times people buy really high-end optics, really high-end this, super, $300 triggers. And I think in a real-world situation, a lot of that stuff is nice, but if you're hunting groups, then yes, those things are important. But if you're actually looking at what is practical in a real-world situation, and there's a difference between combat accuracy and just accuracy. If you're hunting groups, and if you think that's going to translate into making hits in a stressful situation, or whether it makes sense logistically to have dedicate your rifles to shoot its best in 77 grains when 77 grainers are prohibitively expensive, and I can buy M193 in bulk, and if you know your dope on a scope and you know how it's zeroed, you can get combat accuracy out of your basic PMC X-Tac cheap 193 ball. So on the flip side, we'll take a quick look. I've got this BMC Gunfighter grip on it because it helps me do the Surefire. So if you look, just imagine my hand flipping around. I would actually activate it with a thumb cap. I don't really have a need to have it be on a pressure pad. I have pressure pads on some other rifles, and I think, well, Surefires are a little expensive, so that's one reason why I didn't buy it. But the other reason is I can take that light off and take it and put it on another weapon system in a matter of seconds, and it's not limited by having a pressure pad attached to it. Also, you're not looking at a negligent discharge of light discharge because you tapped the pressure pad incorrectly under stress. You kind of have to make a concerted effort to hit that tail cap, and you don't have wires that are kind of snaked through and you have to tie down and hope that they don't fray or get split or what have you. It's a very flush system. There's nothing to get snagged. There's nothing to get pinched, nothing like that. So as you can see, the American Defense riser is QD. So if I want to take this optic off, the QD riser comes off and I can put that on an M4. Everything's all together. The 512 is screwed down to the riser. The riser's QD to the pick rail on the top of the weapon. So everything is very easy to move. Take off in seconds, take off in seconds, take off in seconds. The QD cups are ambidextrous, so I can flip I can take the sling off in seconds. I can swap it to the other side. So without going too far off into the weeds about that, really, this is a video that I could probably make 45 minutes long if I wanted to, but nobody wants to hear me talk for 45 minutes. What you're looking at here is yes, it's more expensive than a standard AR-15 for sure. That's something that you have to decide, is that really worth it to me? But I think if you're considering pistol caliber carbines, and now that the brace rules come out where that's all going to be SBR'd, if you want it in that configuration, whether you have a brace or not, whether it's a stock, what have you, I think bullpups are going to be more popular now that even pistol caliber pistol braces are regulated. That's just my opinion on the issue. I think moving forward, things like the Springfield Hellion or the Croatian import, things like the AUG, which I'm going to do a review on the AUG later. We're going to see that. Also, I really like that rifle as well. And something like the X-95, which I like the X-95 because it takes standard STANAG magazines, NATO magazines. The AUG, you do have the option for that, but you have to pay more for it because the stock costs more money, and you lose a couple features, which is, for one, you don't get a left-handed eject version of that stock. This takes $8 magazines all day long. Everybody has these, and those magazines are used on a bunch of different weapon systems. So commonality of magazines and ammunition is another big plus. That's all I really have for you on this one. We don't go off too much into the specs. This really was just kind of an overview of the rifle and why I bought it and why I've configured it for the way that I've done so, and really my intended uses for it. So this has been episode 28 of Rabbit Hole Reviews, a quick overview of the IWI X-95 Tavor in 5.56.